They laughed as they handcuffed her, calling her suspicious. What they didn't know: she wasn't a civilian. She wasn't powerless. One phone call later, careers were destroyed, and the Pentagon was on the way. "Put your hands behind your back now." The command tore through the quiet evening like a gunshot, sharp and unforgiving. General Naomi Carter froze mid-step. For a split second, she thought the shout couldn't possibly be meant for her. The street was nearly empty, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, the kind of calm you expect near a government guest residence. She had just stepped out of her black SUV, shoulders heavy after a long, exhausting day of high-level meetings that had stretched late into the evening. She wasn't in uniform tonight. Just a dark blazer, simple slacks, and low heels. Her military ID, proof of decades of service, sacrifice, and leadership, rested safely inside her bag. Then came the sirens. 2 police cruisers screeched to a stop behind her, tires protesting against the asphalt. Red and blue lights exploded across the street, flashing against the buildings, reflecting off her car, swallowing the calm whole. Slowly, deliberately, Naomi raised her hands. Years of military training kicked in. Stay calm. Stay aware. Don't escalate. "What seems to be the problem, officers?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension tightening in her chest. One officer stepped closer, his hand already resting on his weapon. His eyes scanned her not with curiosity, but suspicion. "Don't play dumb," he said coldly. "We got a call about a suspicious person loitering in a restricted area." Suspicious. The word echoed in Naomi's mind. That word again. She opened her mouth to respond, to explain who she was and why she was there, but she never got the chance. Without warning, the officer grabbed her arm and yanked it behind her back. Pain shot through her shoulder as another officer forced her other wrist inward. The sound of metal snapping shut was loud, final. Click. Handcuffs. Naomi inhaled sharply, not from the pain, but from the wave of emotion that followed. Anger rose first, then disbelief. But deeper than all of it was disappointment. After more than 25 years of service, after commanding troops, advising leaders, and defending the very freedoms these officers represented, this was how she was seen. A threat. "I'm a U.S. Army general," she said firmly, refusing to let her voice shake. "You need to remove these cuffs immediately." The officers burst out laughing. "Sure you are," one of them sneered. "And I'm the president." Their laughter lingered in the air, but Naomi's expression didn't change, because she knew something they didn't, and very soon they would learn it the hard way. Naomi was shoved forward, her upper body slamming against the cold metal hood of the police car. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. A sharp pain flared through her shoulder where the officer had twisted her arm moments earlier. But the physical pain wasn't what hurt the most. It was the humiliation. The flashing red and blue lights reflected off the windshield, casting harsh colors across her face. She stood there, hands cuffed behind her back, feeling exposed, reduced, stripped of the respect she had spent a lifetime earning. "I am General Naomi Carter," she said again, carefully choosing every word. "You can verify my identity. Call it in." One officer let out a dismissive laugh and rolled his eyes. "We hear stories like this all the time," he said, as if repeating a tired joke. Another officer leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. "People like you always think you're above the law." The words hit harder than the steel biting into her wrists. "People like you." Naomi clenched her jaw. She had heard those words before, in meetings where she was underestimated, in rooms where her authority was questioned before she even spoke. But hearing them now, while handcuffed on a public street, cut deeper than ever. She noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. A small crowd had begun to form. A man across the street lifted his phone, quietly recording. A woman whispered to her companion. Others stood frozen, unsure whether to step in or step back. The silence of bystanders felt heavy, almost louder than the officers' voices. Naomi closed her eyes for a brief moment and took a slow, measured breath. This wasn't a battlefield, but the stakes felt just as high. She knew one thing with absolute certainty. Raising her voice, showing anger, or demanding respect would only confirm the assumptions already made about her. So she spoke calmly. "Please," she said, her tone controlled, dignified. "My military ID is in my bag. You can check it." One officer grabbed the bag off her shoulder and unzipped it roughly. Naomi felt a flicker of hope, but it vanished instantly. Instead of looking inside, the officer slammed the zipper shut and tossed the bag back against the car. "No more talking," he snapped. That was the moment everything became clear to Naomi. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't caution. This was bias. And she understood something deeply in that instant. Bias didn't just humiliate. Left unchecked, it destroyed lives. Unless someone had the power and the courage to confront it. Nearly 20 long minutes passed with Naomi standing handcuffed beside the patrol car. Her wrists ached. Her shoulder burned. But her expression never cracked. Each second stretched painfully, filled with the hum of idling engines and the low chatter of officers who spoke about her as if she weren't standing right there. Time slowed, and the street that once felt calm now felt hostile. Finally, another set of headlights cut through the flashing red and blue. A supervisor's cruiser rolled to a stop. The door opened, and a tall officer stepped out, adjusting his belt as he approached. He took in the scene, the gathered bystanders, the phones pointed toward the street, the black woman standing cuffed in silence. "What's going on here?" he asked. Before Naomi could speak, one of the officers answered quickly, almost rehearsed. "Suspicious individual refusing to cooperate, sir." Naomi turned her head slowly and looked directly at the supervisor. There was no anger in her eyes, no fear, only authority. "I want one phone call," she said, her voice calm, controlled, and unmistakably powerful. "To the Pentagon." For a brief second, the street went quiet. Then the laughter came. "The Pentagon," one officer scoffed. "Yeah, right." Another shook his head. "People will say anything." But the supervisor didn't laugh. Something in Naomi's tone made him pause. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't a bluff. It was certainty. He studied her face, then the cuffs, then the growing crowd watching his every move. After a moment that felt far longer than it was, he exhaled. "Give her the phone," he said reluctantly. An officer handed Naomi a phone. Her hands were still cuffed, so he held it to her ear. Naomi dialed a number she had memorized years ago. When the call connected, she didn't explain. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She spoke only 6 words. "This is General Carter. I need help." Silence filled the line. Then came a response so sharp, so immediate. It wiped the color from the supervisor's face. "Yes, ma'am. Stay where you are." Within 10 minutes, the atmosphere shifted completely. Unmarked black SUVs rolled in quietly, one after another. Military police stepped out, followed by high-ranking officials in crisp uniforms. Their presence alone commanded the street. The officers who had laughed earlier now stood rigid, their confidence evaporated. One senior official walked straight to Naomi, stopped, and saluted her, while she was still in handcuffs. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, his voice heavy with regret. "We are so sorry." The cuffs were removed instantly, and in that moment, power shifted, without a single word raised. The investigation moved fast. Body camera footage was reviewed frame by frame. Every word, every gesture, every decision was documented. The cameras didn't blink. They didn't forget. They captured the truth exactly as it happened. Witness videos were collected next. Dozens of bystanders had recorded the incident from different angles. Their shaky phone footage showed Naomi being shoved, cuffed, and spoken to with open contempt. The clips filled in every gap the body cameras missed. Then the emergency call was traced. The report that claimed a suspicious individual told a very different story when investigators listened closely. There was no threat, no criminal behavior, just assumptions fueled by prejudice. When all the evidence was laid out, the truth became undeniable. The officers had violated multiple protocols. They failed to properly identify a civilian. They ignored her request to verify her credentials. They used unnecessary physical force. And worse than all of that, their recorded statements revealed unmistakable racial bias. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. The footage spread rapidly. First, It circulated through internal law enforcement channels. Then it reached federal investigators. And within days, it exploded into the public eye. News outlets across the country ran the same headline in different forms. Racist cops handcuff black female general. Military leader detained without cause. The story sparked outrage. The Pentagon immediately launched a formal investigation, demanding full transparency and accountability. Military leaders publicly condemned the incident, calling it unacceptable and deeply troubling. The police department attempted to defend its officers at first. Statements were released. Explanations were offered, but none of it held up. The evidence was overwhelming. Every claim collapsed under video, audio, and witness testimony. Within a week, all 3 officers involved were placed on immediate administrative leave. Then came the consequences. One by one, their careers unraveled. They were terminated from the department. Years of service erased in a single decision. Pensions they had counted on were revoked. Federal charges followed, opening the door to courtrooms instead of patrol cars. And finally, the ultimate penalty. Permanent bans from law enforcement. They would never wear a badge again. Their names, once symbols of authority, became warnings. Not warnings of power, but warnings of abuse. A reminder that no uniform, police or otherwise, places someone above accountability. General Naomi Carter never sought revenge. She could have demanded it. The public would have supported her. The outrage was loud, emotional, and justified. But Naomi chose a different path, one shaped by decades of leadership and discipline. Days after the incident, she stood before a row of cameras, the national media watching her every move. She wore her uniform this time, not as a shield, but as a reminder of what she represented. Her posture was calm, her voice steady. "This isn't about me," she said. "It's about accountability." Those simple words carried weight. She spoke about respect, not as a privilege, but as a basic human right. She spoke about fairness, about how easily power could be misused when assumptions replaced understanding. And she spoke honestly about the danger of judging someone before knowing who they truly are. Her message wasn't angry. It was necessary, and it echoed across the nation. Police departments began reviewing their policies almost immediately. Training programs were re-examined. Bias education became mandatory in multiple jurisdictions. Officers were required to complete updated de-escalation courses, designed to prevent moments like this from happening again. Body camera policies were strengthened, ensuring transparency could never again be avoided or delayed. Naomi didn't celebrate these changes. She saw them as a responsibility fulfilled. When the cameras shut off and the headlines faded, she did what she had always done. She returned to duty, back to the meetings, back to advising leaders, back to serving a nation she still believed in, despite everything. She carried no bitterness, no resentment, only resolve. The incident had not broken her. It had not shaken her identity. If anything, it had sharpened her purpose. Stronger, calmer, unbroken, because true power doesn't shout. It doesn't need threats or volume to be heard. True power stands tall, even in handcuffs. And sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't anger, force, or authority. Sometimes it's truth. And sometimes all it takes to expose that truth is one phone call. If this story moved you, make sure you hit the like button. It really helps the channel. Subscribe for more powerful stories that expose the truth, challenge injustice, and remind us that accountability always matters.